Hi, I'm Phil Bainbridge, and in this video, we're going to take a look at editing an existing Google Doc using some AppScript code. I'm in my Google Drive folder here. The first thing we're going to want to create is the Google Doc that we're going to have a practice at editing the content of. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to go to New Google Docs. I'm going to give this document a name. I'm just going to call it Edit This Doc entirely for the purposes of this demo. And what I'm going to have is two pieces of information. So I'm going to put name, colon, and then on the line below, shoe size, colon. So it's going to look a little bit rough, but all we're simply doing here is we're identifying two bits of information. And then what we're going to put afterwards is we're going to use something called a tag. So a way of identifying specific text in the Google Doc that we want the AppScript code to find and change. Now, typically, you would use the less than and more than symbols to do this. So what I've done there is two of the symbols and then the word name wrapped around each of them. Basically, the aim here is to create something unique in the document that doesn't exist anywhere else, so that the AppScript will only find and replace the exact item that you want. So you could use some different symbols if you wanted to. The typical best practice is the less than and more than symbols, and those tend to be what you'll see elsewhere. So there you are, what we are going to use in this demo here. So again, I'm going to put shoe size like so. It's up to you how you do capitals and spaces, etc. As long as you remain consistent when you do this in the AppScript code itself, that's absolutely fine. To keep things nice and simple here, everything is in lowercase without any spaces. So what we're aiming to achieve ultimately is for the AppScript code to come into this document, find the tag name, and replace it with the name that we tell it to. Find the tag shoe size and replace it with that as well. Now, these tags could be absolutely anywhere in a huge document. They could also be in tables, etc. as well. So we're going to leave this document open for the time being because we'll need to get the ID to be able to use that later on with the AppScript code. So if I'm going to go jump back to my folder, and in here, we'll go to New Google Sheets. And we'll continue as we are using this script editor to be able to do this. So I'm just going to call this Edit Document Demo. I'm going to go to Extensions, AppScript. I'm going to give the project title the same name as the Google Sheet, Edit Document Demo. I'm going to name my AppScript file on the left-hand side here, and I'm going to call it Edit Document using the camel case naming convention. I'm also going to change the function name to exactly the same. Edit Document. I'm going to pop my cursor in between the brackets there and hit enter a few times to give myself some space to type what we need. And then I'll hit save just to make sure there's no errors. Now, the first thing we need to do in this demo is get hold of this particular document so we can get the contents of it to start editing it. So we're going to insert a comment using our 2 forward slashes, and I'm just going to type that this is my document ID. I'm not using full English here because I'm kind of happy with what I am, but with what I have. But if you want a bit more of an explanatory comment, that's absolutely fine. I'm getting something, so I know I'm going to store it as a variable using var. And I'm going to call my variable doc ID. Notice I've got a capital I and a lowercase d. You may want both letters in capitals. That's absolutely fine, as long as you remain consistent throughout your code. So if I go to the Google Doc that I've got open here with the tags in it, I want to grab the ID. That's everything after the d / and before the / edit. So it's the combination of letters, symbols, and numbers. I copy that, and back in here, in between single or double quotes, I want to paste the ID in. Semicolon to end the line, save once you're happy. So it should be red because it's a string, and that is our document ID that we'll use in a moment. The next comment that we have is when we've got the document, we actually need to be able to open it to access its content. So our comment will be open document. We're going to store this as a variable because we're still following the track of actually getting something. So I'm going to say var doc, and I'm going to set that equals to, and in this instance, we're going to use the document app now because we're working specifically with a Google Doc, and because we need to be able to access some of the methods you can do with a document specifically, we are looking at using the document app. So it's a capital D and a capital A. If I put a full stop afterwards, the clue was in the comment as to what we're looking at doing here. So if I start typing open, we've got the options of opening by ID or by URL. Typically, you'll tend to see people using the ID. You can kind of achieve the same thing with both of them, but we're going to go for the ID option in this particular demo here. So open by ID, and in the brackets, if I just push my text down a little bit so you can see, what it's ultimately wanting there then is the ID as a string, which we have on line 4. So I'm just going to move this back up. Basically, I'm just going to copy the variable there and paste it in there. Again, making sure there are no typos between the two. Keep consistent. Semicolon to end the line and save once you're happy. So we've got our document. The next thing we actually need to do though is we need to get what's called the body of the document. And that is what could be all this text that could be 70 odd pages long. So we're going to create a comment, 2 forward slashes, and we're going to say get document body. We're getting something, so we're going to save it as a variable. And I'm just going to call my variable doc body, lowercase d, capital B. I'm going to set that equals to. So we have doc here on line 7 as the variable. So if I type doc there, and then if I put my full stop in, we want to get the document body. So we're going to get, and as I start typing, because B is high up in alphabetical order, body is there for me to be able to see. So if I click on that in this instance, remembering to open and close the brackets, we don't need to enter anything this time in there. Semicolon to end that line and save to check you're happy. So now we've got the actual text in the Google Doc from the Google document here. So we're going to do our find and replace now. So let's insert our comments, and they are find and replace name and shoe size in this particular instance. Here is our document body. So we are performing an action now. We're doing something. We're not really going to get anything back. We'll see the change in the document, but we're not getting anything back to store it in the AppScript file here. So we don't need to save this next bit in a variable. So I'm going to call doc body, which we have here on line 10. I'm going to put my full stop, and I know I want to do some replacement. So if I start typing replace, you get replace text here. If I open my brackets, I'm just going to, again, push this down a little bit so you can see. Replace text needs 2 things then. It needs the search pattern as a string, and then it needs the thing it's got to replace it with as a string. So for us, back in the document, our search pattern was this particular tag that we mentioned earlier. That is what we want the AppScript code to go into the entire document and find. So I'm going to highlight and copy that because I don't want to make any typos. And inside single or double quotes, I'm going to paste that in. Also, after the quote, I'm going to put my comma in. And the next thing I wanted to remember is the replacement string. So inside single or double quotes again, I am just going to put the word Mickey, the name Mickey for Mickey Mouse. Now this is, again, static. What that means is it will always replace name with Mickey, which is great for our demo here. That's absolutely fine. In reality, you'll probably start replacing it with data from a Google Sheet. So this will be able to change and update dynamically depending on what you've got. Save that to check everything is happy. So that was name. Next, we're going to do shoe size. funnily enough, we're going to do almost exactly the same as what we've done before. So we want our document, our doc body that we have stored on line 10. We're going to do full stop, replace text. I'm going to hit enter so it auto completes. I'm going to open my brackets. I'm going to go to my document and copy the shoe size tag. Back in the script editor, inside single or double quotes, I'm going to paste in shoe size. Then if I move my cursor just to the right of that and put the comma in, next I want to insert the value. Now it has to be a string here. So even though it's a shoe size, you might think it's a number. It's just the number is going to be in single or double quotes like so. So you'll see it changing red, and hit save like that. That's it. Obviously, if you had any more tags, you would just repeat these lines going down and change the relevant values. Let's run this code now then and see what happens. So we'll give it approval to run against your Google account. Now we've got nothing special in the logs here. We never did a logger.log, but as long as we've got the start and completed, that's looking positive there. If we go into the actual Google Doc itself then, you'll see there's sort of a momentary refresh there where we've now made the changes to this particular document. So that's been successful. Now, for those of you thinking what happens if we were to then rerun this code immediately, it wouldn't break, it wouldn't cause any problems. It would just run and be successful, but inevitably there's no tags anymore for it to find and change. So if you want to just sort of retest this going forwards, you will just need to recreate the tags in your Google document just so you can have a little bit more practice with it. But ultimately, that's it. That's how we can edit an existing Google Doc using Google Apps Script code. Thank you very much.